evening. For those on the Northern Hemisphere, so thanks for being here and from accepting just joining us today. So I will start sharing my screen and we'll go right with the slides. Yeah. Okay, can you see my screen, Sebastian?
Yes, perfect.
Right. Okay, thanks everybody. So welcome to this first webinar on the fundamentals of technology transfer in biotechnology. So this is a conference series that we organized with the support of the network of the Argentinian scientists in the Netherlands and the Ministry of Science in Argentina. So this series has two main purposes. First of all, is to generate awareness for people that are part of the innovation ecosystem in biotech, and also provide tools for help them in the transfer of knowledge into technologies. And the second one is to promote interaction among members of the Argentinian ecosystem to create synergies, of course. So the conference is divided into different steps, which are chronologically according to the talks. So the first part, starting today, is the main aspects of the identification of ideas in the academic environment, so specifically knowledge transfer. Then on the second stage, we will talk about how these ideas how people invest in these ideas to generate particularly startups. The third part is to work at the startups. People will be telling their experience in working for these companies. And for how, if a startup is successful in creating a new product, how these products finally can reach the market. So the organizers, it's myself. So my name is David Silvestre. I'll be your host today. So I work for the Knowledge Transfer Office in the University of Liège in Belgium. Silvana de la Pena, so she is representing, so she coordinates the network of Argentinian scientists in the Netherlands. And on behalf of the Argentinian Ministry of Science, Luciano D'Acenzo and Sebastian, which is present today, are supporting us. So some housekeeping rules with respect to how I want to proceed with the presentation. So as you can see, the presentation and Q&A will be in English. This presentation is being recorded. All participants will be muted throughout the presentation of Tom. Sebastian, you can do that, isn't it?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So please make your questions on the chat. So we'll decide at the end of the presentation of the number of questions, if everybody will make their own question orally, or I will just make a summary, depending on if time allows. If there are questions left and it's considered pertinent, Tom kindly agreed to extend the discussion for another 15 minutes. And a questionnaire will be sent to the participants of this talk and the other talks at the end of the conference series to see how was the experience and if what can we do in the future. So now let's talk about our speaker today. So it's Tom Hockaday. So we are very lucky to have him today to share his experience with us. So Tom has a very long experience in knowledge transfer in the university environment. So he worked for UCL first. Then he was the head of technology transfer at the University of Bristol. Then he had a similar role at the University of Oxford for 16 years. And now he's using all his experience as a consultant in his own company, let's say. And recently in 2020, he published a book on university technology transfer. So here you have the cover of the book. It's a book I read, which for everybody that is interested in how to do it, how to create technology or applications from science, it's a very useful and interesting and easy to read manual, I would say. It's also not just told from the experience of a professional, but it's also told from the experience of a human being, let's say, that have to grow on this field. So it's like the human side of Tom's journey, which I think also makes it like a really interesting read. And recently the book has been translated into Spanish. So that's, yeah, also potentially good to take into account. And having said all this, I will share my screen with Tom. So Tom, the dance floor is yours. So we are more than excited to hear your presentation.
Okay, well, look, thank you, David. Thank you. And hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you. I will share my screen. Inevitably, I have a PowerPoint presentation, and I will go through that for maybe 40 minutes, that sort of thing. And then we can have a conversation afterwards. So let me share the screen. I think hopefully that's working. Is that working? Yep, we have nodding heads. Okay, great. Well, I will start. Let me just move that. Good. Yeah, so off we go. Now it's not moving from one to the other. Here we are. Yeah, so just by way of introduction, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? So for me, this is a challenge and a question of how do we transfer the brilliance of academic research, the results of academic research to business so that new products, services, and medicines can be developed to benefit society. So that's what I think we're talking about, technology transfer from early stage research to benefit society. And a key point here is that sometimes the commercial route is the best way to deliver benefits from university research results. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And that's really important. This is not for everybody. It's not for all the researchers. It's not for all the scientists. It's not for all the types of research output that come. But sometimes the commercial route is the best way to deliver benefits. Sometimes it's the only way, but that might be more controversial. But for sure, sometimes it's the best way to deliver benefits from university research results. So we need to understand how universities can partner with business to achieve this. And a very good example is from the recent COVID pandemic, the developments together by the University of Oxford and AstraZeneca of the COVID vaccine that has been administered to I think about 200 million people now around the world, or more people have had doses of this COVID vaccine than any other. And this is a very good example of university technology transfer. The only way this could happen in the way that it did, developed at the university, but then engaging with a commercial partner so that that company could invest in developing it from a university research output into a vaccine and developing it, distributing it across and around the world. Before the COVID vaccine and before this example, when people would say, what is tech transfer? What do you do? You could start explaining it and it may be harder. I think this is a perfect example which everybody can immediately understand. So what I plan to do is talk about these 5 headings, starting with an overview of technology transfer and talking about some of the challenges, variations around the world, current trends, future directions, and then thinking what it is that may be appropriate for Argentina today. So tech transfer. First of all, something on language. I always talk about technology transfer, tech transfer. Others talk about knowledge transfer, and some talk about the knowledge exchange, others wider engagement of universities, other the third mission. And this language is helpful to a certain extent, but it can also get a little confusing and people can get a little sort of over interested in it. For me, tech transfer is the commercial activity people started to say, well, it's not always technology. Sometimes we're transferring knowledge, that's fine. Then people started to say, it's not just a one-way transfer, it's an exchange from universities to business. So they started talking about knowledge exchange, et cetera, et cetera. But at the heart, it's this commercial activity, because sometimes that's the best way to achieve benefits. The other point on the language is, are we only talking about universities? No, of course not. We're talking about what I think you can call the research base. So this idea of anywhere where early stage publicly funded research is happening. So that might be government labs, might be hospitals, might be public research organizations, etc. But it's from the research base through the commercial route out to business and society. Now, I produced this picture just to show what is university technology transfer at its most straightforward. So we start with the university doing research, we transfer that to industry, and I'll talk about that, with investors involved, and then they sell products or transfer benefits across to society. So that's what this is. With government at the bottom there, supporting this activity in a whole range of ways. Obviously, government supports universities, supports industry, supports society. And it's sometimes referred to as a triple helix activity, where the three players or actors are the university, research, business, and government. But it's a straightforward, simple idea of how do you get stuff from universities to the people. And as well as the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine, other examples just to show you the sort of thing that can happen. This was a lightweight electric motor that was developed in the engineering department at the University of Oxford. We filed patent applications on it. That's when I say we, that's the researchers involved and the tech transfer office. Filed patent applications, looked for commercial partners, set up a new company, and this product is now being developed and sold around the world through the company Yasa Motors. Another example, Nightstar. This is a gene therapy company for various eye disorders. Nightstar, we set up a company. It developed the technology and has now been acquired by a large US company, and that technology is now going through to market. Another example, just to show you that these technologies can come from anywhere, and I know the focus for you is the sort of biosciences, and there's a huge range of examples that come from the biosciences, but of course tech transfer happens elsewhere as well. This was a team from the zoology department and collaboration with some computer scientists created a software model that was particularly good at showing a human and animal movements realistically. So there were computer games, all this sort of thing. And final example, just to show you the range of activities. It's not always about setting up new spin-out companies. It also involves licensing to existing companies. So this was a prenatal blood test technology developed at Oxford, or invented at Oxford, developed at Oxford, then licensed out to Sequinom in the US. And this is a blood test of the maternal blood that can give indications of the fetus. And so just a range of the sorts of opportunities, the sorts of projects that can get involved and can come out of university research. In many ways, when you think about what's going on in universities, the early stage research, the nature of that, it's so broad, it's so wide ranging, and opportunities can come from anywhere across a university or research base. So those are the sort of outcomes, but how does it happen? The basics of how you go about managing a particular project. I break this down into these stages of identifying. So working with researchers to identify potential projects, the outputs of research, evaluating them in terms of, is there some commercial potential, protecting them very often through filing patent applications, but it's not only about patents, copyright in particular as well, sometimes trademarks, then marketing them. So from the university lab, from the research base, from the tech transfer office, how do we tell the world about these? How do we identify potential commercial partners and promote these technologies so that there's some opportunity to do a deal, then doing the deal, and managing the relationship afterwards. So it's an activity that we can break down into these simple stages. Now, of course, from a sort of project management point of view, the good thing is that you're never working on your own. There's always a team of people involved. This is from the perspective of the technology transfer manager, working with researchers, working with consultants, working with patent attorneys, always building a team, which is usually at the heart of the team is the researchers themselves, plus the technology transfer people trying to work out how to go from research to market. Now, on this aspect of the deal, we're trying to transfer the technology out to business so that business can use its resources to invest so that the good things get to market. And there are two main routes, either licensing to an existing company or setting up a new spin-out or spin-off company that needs to raise money to develop the technology. So that's what it looks like from a very sort of practical point of view. The role of the Technology Transfer Office. So I have worked in technology transfer offices for about 25 years. I finished in Oxford 5 or 6 years ago, and as David said, I've been working as a consultant. And the Technology Transfer Office is the group of people within your university or research institute that can help you as a researcher to transfer the technologies, go through those different project stages and provide the help in terms of patent budget that can pay for the patenting, in terms of marketing contacts, deal negotiation, etc. Now, these are again, typically called the Technology Transfer Office, but sometimes a knowledge transfer office, knowledge exchange office. As a university, thinking about how we should organize this, there are many different aspects to that, and many sort of subtle distinctions. Questions about where should the office report to the rector, to the finance director, the pro-vice chancellor, but thinking about how it plugs in to the rest of the university is important. The structure of the office, there's a question, should this activity be part of the university administration, or should we set it up as a separate company, wholly owned by the university, but a separate company because it's a business activity that will benefit from being in a business environment? And that's a point that's debated frequently all over the world. Should it be in the university administration or should it be a company? I've worked in both environments. In Oxford, it was a wholly owned company. We were very successful, but does that mean a company is best? Not necessarily. In the UK, out of about 150 universities, less than 10 have a company doing this activity, but they are the bigger universities, Oxford, Cambridge, UCL, Imperial, etc. So there's a lot of debate around that point. Then, of course, the size of the office, which is really just a function of the amount of resource that the university can put in, which in itself may reflect the amount of resource government is putting into this activity. But how big is the tech transfer office? Now, probably everybody working in a tech transfer office will tell you, we need more people. It's not big enough, we're under pressure. That's probably always true. So there's always a question for a university as to how much resource they put in. There's another key point about this as well, which is certainly central to the Tech Transfer Office, but also the institution as a whole. What is the purpose? What is the purpose of the Tech Transfer Office? But what is the purpose of doing this activity in the first place? And you can sort of manage, you can look at that in terms of transferring technology, which really means doing deals. But to what extent are we trying to make money? To what extent are we trying to generate impact? And I'll talk about that in a moment. So for me, the purpose of the Tech Transfer Office is best summarized here. This was probably first written down about 20 years ago by my predecessor in Oxford. The Technology Transfer Office helps researchers who want to commercialize the results of their research. So the TTO exists to help researchers. It's not about the researchers doing their work, passing it to the TTO who pass it to industry. It's the researchers and the TTO working together to get this out to business. Now, what resources do you need to do this effectively? I've come up with a list of things that begin with P. It's been pointed out to me a number of times that these things don't necessarily begin with the letter P in every language. And as far as your Spanish is concerned, I'm sure you can work that out. This was also once pointed out to me in China, where, of course, I think none of these things begin with the letter P, but never mind. So what do you need? You need people. So you need people in the Tech Transfer Office who can help the researchers. You need lots of policies. There are lots of aspects to this activity where the university wants really clear policies. Who owns the intellectual property? Who owns the research results that come out? If they're patented, who owns those? If you make money, who gets the money? How are royalties distributed between the university, the inventors? If we set up a new company, who gets shareholdings, et cetera, et cetera. There are lots of policy areas that need to be put in place in a university to do this effectively. You need some money for not only to pay for the salaries of the people, you need some money for patenting. This is at the heart, and certainly from a life sciences, healthcare, biotechnology, biopharmaceutical perspective, most of the projects we're trying to get through to market will need patenting of some sort or another. So you need some money. How much money do we have for patenting? This is really important because if we've got a small amount of money, we can only keep the protection in place for maybe a year. So if we don't do a deal within a year, the project falls away and there's no more commercial opportunity. If we have a large patent budget, we can keep the patent position for 2, 3, 4, 5 years so the value is added. Industry can understand the value and we can develop the opportunity. Proof of concept fund, very important to try to add value to a technology so industry can understand it. We need to do lots of promotion, lots of marketing. You need lots of processes and procedures. A lot of this is about project management that we've talked about a little bit. So you need those skills. So these people are really project managers, starting with a project, helping carry it through the various stages. There's lots of paperwork involved, lots of administration, keeping track of all of the projects and the opportunities. And then this quite interesting question, well, performance measurement. How do we measure? How do we know whether we're doing well? What does good look like, as they say? And are we managing our projects effectively and doing what people want us to do? So in fact, starting from the very simple diagram of going from university to industry to society, you begin to break it down. It's a very complicated, a very detailed activity. But it's one of those things where the more you put in, the more you get out. So this is a chart, quite a complicated chart, but it shows from 1990 all the way up to 2021. The red dots here, these are the staff, the number of people that were in the technology transfer office. So it got up to about 90 people in the Oxford University Tech Transfer Office. Then actually it fell back a bit. It's now about 80 people. So these red dots are the number of people. And this is the amount of university support. The university was putting in £1 million a year. It now puts in £5 million a year. And the blue line is the total income that came into the tech transfer office, mainly from sort of licensing activity, but other forms of income as well. And you can see the more people that came in, the more business we did, the more projects we managed, the more deals we did, the more money we made. And the money, yeah, it had some peaks and troughs, but you can see it rising steadily. So the more you put in, the more you get out. And this is a really important point for, in particular, sort of policymakers to understand, because there's a general feeling sometimes that this important activity, technology transfer, we want it to happen, and somehow it'll happen on its own by magic. That's not true. You need to put resources in to get things out. This picture here, this shows it's another way of saying the same thing. This is just about spin-out companies from Oxford. So 1959 was the first one, but things began to get going in year 2000. And you can see that the number of companies being set up each year, and it really took off. This is 2015. It really exploded then, partly because there was a new investment fund that came in. So when I was there, we were setting up 5 or 6, 7 or 8 companies a year. It's now about 20. It's a huge activity. But as this slide shows, it's been going on for a very long time. So we started 30 years ago, and it's only having started and having continued that you get to a level of high success. So another of the messages here is, number one, you need to put resources in for it to happen. Number two, it takes a long time. So, of course, if you start now, you can learn from the mistakes of others. You can borrow the good practice of others. But a lot of this is about culture change. It's about getting people in the university to think in a slightly different way, to embrace engaging with industry. And it takes a long time to get going. But as we always say with something, if you want to do it and it takes a long time, the best thing is to start now and not stop. So that's kind of what it is. I thought I'd then talk about some of the challenges that arise when you're trying to do this exciting activity. The fundamentals are that universities and business are different. We're trying to move things from a university to business, and the objectives of the people and the institutions, the motivations, the ownership are different. They are fundamentally different environments. And one of these pictures is of a university, and one of them is of a business. And you can probably work out which is which. And inherently, instinctively, we know that universities and business are different. But just in case you're not sure, this one here on the left is the university, and on the right we have a business. The people are different. So again, here we have a picture of a person from a university and a person from a business, and they're different. And again, you can probably guess which is which, but just for clarity, the one on the left is from business. He was the chief executive of GlaxoSmithKline. And the one on the right is from a university. He was the chancellor, still is the chancellor of the University of Oxford. The people are different, the buildings are different, and the expectations are different. So on the left, you have a picture of a research lab in a university. The researchers are very excited. They've got something to work once. Fantastic, my job is complete. But you get some industry people coming in here, or some investors coming in, and they say, okay, So now where do we start? And this idea of early stage, everything done in the university is early stage. And industry will tell you, investors will tell you, very interesting, but it's too early stage. You've got it to work once or twice, but actually we need to turn this into a repeatable exercise. We need to develop it, etc., etc. So, why this is difficult is this fundamental point that universities and business are different. It's not that one is better or more important than the other. They're both really, really important. Connecting them together is part of the challenge. There's another sort of fundamental difficulty, which I sort of label who wants what. So this activity, it's not only about university scientists and business people. Everybody has an interest in this activity. So, who is involved? Whoever you are, maybe you're in the tech transfer office, maybe you're a scientist, maybe you're a leader. So your staff, what are their interests compared to yours, the university as a whole? What does industry want? What do investors want? What does government want? What does society want? And in terms of what, are people looking for money through royalties? Maybe they would rather have shares in spin-out companies. Maybe actually, if you're a scientist, what you really want is the research funding. You don't really care about this. That's on the money side, but for many people, it's not about the money anyway. It's really about impact. It's about generating impact, reaching society. And for the vice chancellor of the university or the rector, maybe boosting the reputation of the university, more about transferring knowledge to benefit society, creating great stories that you can tell around the dinner table, etc. So who wants what? Who? Lots of different types of people, stakeholders you could call them, and lots of different demands on the activity, which again adds to the complexity. And one of these fundamental points is this income impact balance. And this has been a big part of the conversation on tech transfer in the UK for the last 10 years, is do we want income or do we want impact? And everyone says, yes, we want both. But it's harder to generate both. Where we've got to in the UK is everybody says in the universities and in government, we want impact. We want university generated research to be transferred to society, to benefit society, to have impact in society. And if those are your objectives, you go about technology transfer in a certain way. If you're the university and the tech transfer office, you're less interested in the amount of money you get because you're just trying to transfer it out there. But also people say, yes, but we also want you to generate lots of income in doing this. And that creates quite a lot of tension. Are we going to try and generate the income or are we going to generate the impact? There was a very good report that came out in the UK in 2016, which I recommend to people interested in this. And this was conducted by a professor, vice chancellor of a UK university in Kiel, Trevor Macmillan. And it came to the conclusion, universities do technology transfer as part of their mission to deliver impact for society, just like they do teaching and research and run museums and scholarship and look after libraries and have sports centers. It's part of their mission to deliver impact. And technology transfer usually incurs a net cost for universities. Really, really important. There's only a very small number of universities in the world that make money out of this. It's a cost to a university, but it's a cost the university and the government can embrace because it's benefiting society. So that's really the way to think about this. 20 or 30 years ago, I think some universities thought, hey, look, we can make loads of money from this. wrong, wrong, wrong. Really what it's about is seeing the university research base as a source of amazing ideas that can be transferred out to benefit society. And it needs investment. Another of the complexities, another difficult area is incentives. How do we get people to engage in this activity, whoever they are? And with incentives, there's always different types of incentives: financial, basic, we'll give you some money; non-financial, in terms of recognition and reward, prizes, vice chancellor's prize for best invention of the year, whatever it may be. And also a question, is engaging in tech transfer taken into account in career progression? And what are the incentives for the university as an institution, maybe from government, heads of department, research staff? Another complex area for everyone to think about. Fundamentally, this comes down to the researchers. Why should I? Why should I bother? Look, I'm quite busy. I'm doing some research, I'm doing some teaching, I'm doing some administration. Why should I get involved in this thing that people say I have to do on top? It's not going to help my career progression. And this is where a lot of the debate arises. So getting the incentives for researchers right is important. Measurement, I talked about performance measurement. It's helpful to think about this in terms of numbers and narratives. So, you've got a choice. You can talk to people about the number of deals you do, the number of patent applications you do, which is generally very boring, but people like these benchmarks, and you can come up with quite complicated ways of representing the data about this as an activity. Or you can tell stories about the COVID vaccine or the electric motor or this apple that was developed at Leuven University and has been sold around the world. And you can also tie the activity to, for example, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to show how you're having impact on society. And an observation I would make is that the tech transfer community has spent far too long on the numbers and now needs to give far more attention to the stories and also the impact on society, because that's a far more appealing way of getting the message across. So in conclusion on this point, it's complicated. These are all the sorts of things that you need to know about and be good at for a tech transfer program to be successful. And it's one of these things which some people say, it's easy and you're bad at it, but that's just wrong. It's difficult and we're good at it. I mean, certainly in the UK, we're very good at it. In many places in Europe, in Belgium in particular, we're good at it. In the States, some places are good at it. I think helping to understand and explain the complexity to everybody who's involved can help overcome these criticisms that are, well, you're not doing it very well. So it's difficult, but it can be great fun and successful. I've certainly enjoyed my 30 years at it. Variations, just to run through these last few sections. Wherever you're doing this. So my experience is mainly in the UK, but I've worked in many countries around the world. But thinking about this for Argentina, fundamentally, what is the national framework like? The laws for setting up new companies, for intellectual property rights, etc. That's important. The nature of universities. Are they state-owned? Are they private? Are they charities? That influences quite a lot of the way that you go about doing this. Types of universities. So in the UK, there are about 150 universities, from places like Oxford and Cambridge to far smaller, very local, regionally focused teaching institutions. The people who decide how you do tech transfer in a country or in a university, it's fascinating to note and to see that the decisions are taken by a small number of people. the 5 or 6 people in charge at the time. And that's one of the reasons that you get a lot of variation, is because everybody comes along and thinks, this is easy, we're not good at it, we'll change it to make it better. That's why I've been explaining it's not easy, it's difficult, and we're quite good at it. Also, depending where you are, the market you're in, the absorption capacity of the local market is incredibly important. And what's that like in the UK? Well, worse now that we've left the European Union. What's it like in the US? Great, because you have the whole US market. What's it like in Argentina? I don't know. So you can look at the UK and you can say the legal system is good. There's a good patent system, good company system, universities, charitable foundations, a lot of independence, lots of different types of university described in various ways, the people who take the decisions, the market, etc. But it's quite useful, I think, to think about these variations for Argentina as you develop the opportunities there. What are the characteristics of our place, and therefore which issues do we want to work on, which issues, where are we well placed to create benefit? So another comment on variations, we know everyone is special. We're all special, we're all different, all our universities are wonderful in different ways, but also everyone's the same. You need a purpose. You need to understand what is the purpose of doing this? What is the purpose of tech transfer in Argentina or in a university? Are we trying to serve the international community? Are we trying to make lots of money? Or are we trying to serve local industry and help them as best we can? And you need a plan, you need resources and timescales. As I say, you need to recognize it takes a long time. Current trends, future directions. I've just got one slide on this. I could talk about this for a long, long time. There is this trend around, are we talking about technology transfer, exchange, or knowledge? I mean, for me, it's not a particularly interesting conversation, but it's an important one to have, to know if you're looking for commercializable technologies or a very broader based knowledge. The second one, there's a sort of trend at the moment to go from this idea of it's all about technology to the broader base of arts, humanities, social sciences. How can we help everybody in the university potentially transfer their ideas out to benefit society? And often this comes down to a question of creating social enterprises. So that's a current theme. Another one, standardization. Look, why is this so complicated? Why is it so difficult? Why does everyone do it differently? Can we standardize some of it? Another theme, student entrepreneurship. So I look at this in terms of the grown-ups and the children. So the grown-ups are the academics, and we have one approach for them of tech transfer. And the children are the students, the kids. Student entrepreneurship is incredibly exciting and has really taken off, exploded in a very positive way in the last 20 years. And how can the tech transfer programs run alongside the student entrepreneurship programs? Impact and not income, we've talked about that. But if you want impact, you have to realize you need to pay for the activity. And if you try to get income, only a very few are successful. Storytelling, I've mentioned, the need to move towards telling better stories and connecting what the tech transfer people are doing with the broader institution. So again, reputation management. Most of the leadership in a university, the thing they're most interested in is managing their reputation. So connect the tech transfer activity to the institution. And so finally, for Argentina today, I think, I know I've never been to your country. I know very little about it. I apologize for that. But I think some fundamentals which are true everywhere. You need money. So this is partly a conversation with the government, partly a conversation with universities. You need money because this will not happen on its own. Involve everyone. So as this activity builds and grows and develops, make sure everyone is talking to each other. So the university leaders, the university researchers, industry, investors, government. Government, there's sort of two parts, the politicians, but also the administration. Create a national association of tech transfer offices. So in the US, there's an association called Autumn, in the UK, Praxis Oral, in Switzerland, for example, SWIT. Maybe this exists, but if not, the National Association of Argentinian Tech Transfer People, whatever you'll call it, it's really helpful to create that so you can talk to each other, share challenges, and make friends. Address this question of what, then how. What are we trying to achieve? How can we do it? It's very common, people start with this question, okay, how can we set this up? That's question 2. Question 1 is, what are we trying to do? It's very common to see people forget about question 1 and only start with question 2. And finally, I'd say build the innovation community. So what do I mean? This is the innovation community. You are at the center of this, whoever you are, whatever you do. And if you want to do university technology transfer successfully, but if you want to build innovation activity in your university, in your place, there's lots and lots of different people that you need to interact with, lots and lots of different types of organizations and types of people that you need to connect with. So in Oxford, we set up something called the Oxford Innovation Society. And this, in fact, was set up long before my time, 1990. And we would have 3 big events, dinners, each year with people from industry, investors, professions, government, policy makers, etc. So lots and lots of different people, bringing them together so they get to know each other, and they eventually start doing deals with each other. I think it's a important point to notice that people like doing business, whatever that is. People like doing things with people they know. How do you get to know each other? Come to events like this. And so build relationships first and deals will follow. So another way of putting this, which is a great place to end, is just have lots of parties. And I think that's the key to growing a successful technology transfer program. Have lots of parties so that everybody involved, invite all those people, get them together, everybody gets to know each other, and then they can do some deals together. So thank you. I will finish there, stop sharing my screen, and we have a bit of time for discussion as you wish. There we go.
Okay,
David,
thanks, Tom.
back to you.
Yeah, that was a very comprehensive and very clear presentation. I think what I really liked about it is like you put things like the context of Argentina on a really useful and clear perspective. So I think just having an idea of how Oxford does it, but of course, Oxford is one of the usual suspects, let's say, worldwide when we talk about these activities. So of course, Argentina is a different environment. So I think this translatable, let's say, take-home messages are really, really useful. So let's start with some questions. So I have, because I'm the host, so I will take the first one for myself. So this is quite a difficult topic when it comes to create a particular spin-offs. It's what's the role of the researchers in a spin-off? So of course, I mean, especially investors, they want to have the researchers on board of the new companies. So, and from the perspective or from your experience, because I mean, there are two approaches when it comes to the position of the researcher. I mean, I'm talking about specifically about their contracts. Some are there just forced to basically quit the relationship with the university and start a new job. And some are just given like some leeway, let's say, just to go try, and if it doesn't work, come back. So according to what you experience, but that also has the risk that the researchers might see that as some kind of a sabbatical, let's say. I don't know if that happens, but in my university, I mean, I was discussing this, and that's a little bit the fear that people at the TTO has. So according to what you experience, I mean, what's what can work there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the researchers are absolutely fundamental and central to the success of any project, whether it's licensing or spin out. And for spin out companies in particular, they are essential at the start. Now, how long they need to be involved is open for debate. Sometimes you see the researchers staying involved for 5-10 years, but sometimes they fade away after 1 or 2 years. This is one of the sort of policy areas. As an employee, can they become part-time university, part-time company? Can they be consultants to the company? Can they be on the board of directors, a director of the company? So these are policy areas that you need to decide. In my experience, the best thing is to have some flexibility, so that if the researcher needs to get involved heavily, they can maybe become part-time for a while, but to have very clear time limits on that, flexibility. So maybe part-time for 1 year or 2 years. Can they be consultants? Yes. Can they be directors? Yes, but you need to manage for conflicts of interest. And I mean, what I see around the world is that most of these spin-out companies are set up, too early. So the approach we had was we would only set up a company, or sort of announce the company or really get it going when we had investors and when we had management. So we would talk about the S and the M. We had the science, we had the scientists, we needed to find the money and find the management. And lots of companies are being set up without money and without management, just the scientists taking something out. And in general, that's not very good, because the chances of success are quite low. So actually the way you consider a spin out goes right to the heart of your question about, so what is the role of the academics?
Yeah, okay. Thanks. So we have a question from Santiago Ini. Santiago, you can do it yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi.
Hello. I just want to ask you how is the the profits distributed in Oxford, for example. You mentioned that the government invests £5 million. However, the same year you have a revenue of 20 million pounds. So where is the money? Where is the money?
Yeah. So the government or the university provides a lot of sort of grants to stimulate the activity each year. In terms of the income that we generate, every university sort of has a rule. So for royalty income, that comes in and is distributed usually between the tech transfer office, the university, centrally, the department, and the inventors. So you have a policy, you have some rules. In Oxford, roughly speaking, it's the tech transfer office, the university, the department, the inventors equally, roughly. There's a common model around the world where 1/3 for the university, 1/3 for the host department, chemistry, physics, immunology, 1/3 for the inventors. And the inventors, let's say there's 2 inventors or 3 inventors, they divide it up however they think is fair. With spin-out companies, it's different because you have the shareholding. So you have to have a clear understanding who owns the shares in the company. And if we sell them, who gets the money. So again, in the UK, the university will have some shares, the scientists will have some shares, investors, managers, etc. And then for us as a company, any final profit we made, we would give that back to the university as a donation to the charity. So because of the way we were set up.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have another question, Tom. So there's also one topic which is quite, tricky many times when it comes to researchers having a result of their research that have a translational potential. And there is this balance between patent protection and disclosure. IP protection and disclosure. So what happens many times is the TTO finds out that it's something that has potential, but it's too late because it has been published or it's in a congress or whatever. So according to your experience, what is the best way from the TTO perspective to have an idea? Because I mean, you cannot ask everybody to make an invention disclosure. It's just too much. Some places do it. So to do this, and at the same time, what is the best way to find a way that works out for researchers that they just want to publish and they see the patents as just a side activity?
Yeah. So I mean, this is a big area, as you say. I think that I'd say two things. Number one, for the Tech Transfer Office to have a slogan and to promote that around the university: think patent before you publish. Think patent before you publish. Now, you don't have to think for more than 1 second, but if you want to get involved in patenting, you think, okay, I need to think about this. I better talk to the tech transfer people, because as your question implies, the obvious point that you can only get patent protection on something that's new. And so if you've already published it, it's not new, so you won't get a patent. So you want to file your patent application before the publication. And there are lots of ways of managing that. But I think at the headlines, think patent before you publish. And it's not for everyone, but they might think, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll talk to those guys. The second thing to encourage this, and we say this to all the tech transfer people, is be nice. Just try to be nice and friendly. What you want is everybody in the university to think, gosh, the tech transfer people are really nice. I really like them. I want to talk to them. Be friendly, have parties, give people food and drink and wine and everything, make friends with everyone. And in a more practical sense, but I'm serious to an extent, because you want the researchers to see a route to you as easy as possible. They know you, they like you, it's easy, rather than, okay, I'll think patent, oh, it's too complicated, I don't want to, I won't bother. So I think those two things, but obviously it's a complicated subject.
Yeah. So we have one question from Alex Urrutia. So Alex, you can make your question yourself. Sebastian, maybe you can open the microphone for Alex.
Oh, he says not now. Sorry, that's fine. So you think, Tom, if is it mandatory to teach or build? Well, that's a good question. I mean, is it mandatory? It's not essential, it's not compulsory, but is it a good idea? Yes, definitely. And sometimes there's a question, can you teach entrepreneurship, or is it natural? Some people are naturally more entrepreneurial, some will never be entrepreneurs, but even the people who are naturally good at it, they need help. So the comparison is often made with musicians, with pianists or guitar players. They might be brilliant, but you still need to give them a piano. You need to give them a guitar. So you need to provide them with the tools, the knowledge, the understanding for them to do it. So I think it's a really good idea for a university to develop, as you say, entrepreneurial capacity, training, skills for PhDs and postdocs. Yes. Is it compulsory? No, it's just a good idea.
Okay. So yeah, I have a last question from my side. So that's related also to the Argentinian ecosystem, let's say, because usually most, let's say, technology transfer environments are focalized on boosting economically one region. So there's always this balance between local and global. So for, let's say, a country like Argentina, which we consider is not like central or still has a lot of to develop, I mean, but still, I mean, from a scientific perspective, have things to offer. I mean, it's like, what would be, according to you, like a good, would be like just, okay, let's focalize locally and then we expand globally. Both, what are the risks on each approach?
Yeah, I think you want a national strategy on this, and you want to look at all of the universities across the country and think then within a region. And for each university, what is the best way for them to play this? Do they have international research capacity, or is it actually a local activity? So, I mean, just in Oxford, for example, there are 2 universities in Oxford. One is the University of Oxford, which is a world leader in research and everybody's heard of, let's say, and is ranked as the best university in the world, which is great. There's also something called Oxford Brookes University, which was an old polytechnic, mainly teaching, more business focused, more jobs focused. And that plays a far more local role. So, for example, they have a lot of education and training activities connected to the local motorsport cluster, because around Oxford, in Oxfordshire, there's lots of engineering for motorsport. So in any one place, you can have institutions playing different roles, very local, very regional, or totally international. So I think it's just helpful to understand for each institution to understand what its role is in this debate, but at a national level or regional, if the power is in the regions, for them to have a strategy as to how this is being done.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. So we have a question from Daniel Plopper. So he thanks for an excellent presentation. And he says, in my research institution, which is focused on agriculture, we patent development, but all profits go to the institution and researchers only get recognition. Does the policy stimulate spin-off companies?
Well, I can give an answer to that, but I may get myself or you into trouble. Does it stimulate spin-off companies? No. But I don't want to cause trouble. No, I think it's very common practice and it's good practice for the people involved to be directly incentivized in the activity. And there are lots of reasons for this, partly just simple personal motivation, partly raising investment from investors. Investors want you, the inventors, they want you to be directly, personally motivated, incentivized, rewarded, because then you will do more for the company. So I think if you want to stimulate spin-off companies, it's a very good idea for the inventors to own shares, for inventors to get a share of the licensing income. But there's one fundamental point that in many countries, all of the universities are state-owned, they're government-owned public institutions. And so the rules on this can be very restricted. But if the rules are restricted at a national level, you just want to change them. And it might take a few years, but you really want to try to change them.
Okay. So I think that's where all the questions. Tom, thanks again for your talk. It was great having you. I think, I mean, I try to speak for myself. I learned really a lot. And yeah, from this very, very interesting, oh, sorry. Go ahead. Hello. Hello.
Hello, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Se escucha bien.
From this very fascinating field. Yeah, thanks for your presence and for the rest of the
Speaker, I don't know, do you want to say something, Tom?
Well, just to say finally, look, thank you. Good luck. Thank you for inviting me. Good luck with all the rest of the program. I'm just the start, so I gave a very general position. You have lots of detailed talks, and at the end of it, you'll all be very well placed to do exciting things. So
absolutely, yeah. Thanks a lot, Tom. And for the rest of the people present here, so do not forget that we have our next presentation. Just a brief reminder. Let me share my screen. Well, doesn't matter. Next 26th of January. So the second presentation will be by Antoine Belling. So he's the director of the TTO of the University of Nijmegen in the Netherlands. So he's going to tell us his experience on a particular TTO. So he took care of the TTO and he made like a huge change. And now, I mean, how does it work on a particular case and all the challenges and things that have been going through since he's in charge of it. Thanks everybody for being there. I hope that that was like a nice experience for all of you. It was for me. And yeah, see you on the next presentation then.
Great. Good. Bye-bye, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.